Buenas tardes. Vamos a iniciar de la doctora Teresa Simas. Ella es jefa del área del medio marino y políticas públicas en WINDFLOAT Offshore Renewables en Lisboa, Portugal. Ella es bióloga marina de la Universidad de Algarve y tiene maestría y doctorado en ciencias ambientales por la nueva Universidad de Lisboa. Actualmente coordina el equipo ambiental y los proyectos de investigación y evaluación ambiental marina. Y bueno, también si alguien tiene alguna pregunta al final o a lo largo de la presentación, vamos a estar por la página del Facebook del Grupo de Ingeniería de Costas y Puertos, ahí pueden hacerla y bueno, ya que a los que están por video streaming, y los dejo con la doctora Teresa.
Muchas gracias por estar aquí. Es un gusto para mí vir al México, es la primera vez que vengo. Más voy a hablar en inglés, si no se importan, porque mi español no es muy bueno. Más si quieres después preguntar cualquier cosa en español, lo entiendo perfectamente. Sorry. So the title for the presentation today is Challenges for Marine Renewable Energy Implementation, and I will speak, of course, about the experience I have from European waters and more specifically from my country, from Portugal, where some of the projects have been installed. And because I think I'm talking mostly for engineers, I would like to start with some calculations because I know that you like them. So I put here, well, this calculation was made by an engineer, so you can trust them. I'm a marine biologist, so you can trust these calculations because they were made by one of my colleagues and is a very good engineer. And the challenge was to calculate the amount of energy that a human being needs to survive. So he got these values you can see here that are different for women and for men. But the thing is that he attained a value for what are the energy needs for one person. But the truth is that we don't actually use just the energy that we need to live. So the energy, if we speak about, or if we think about the energy that all humanity needs to live, to survive, we have to have per day 8 times the energy that is needed to put the space shuttle on air. But actually, the energy that we are using, the amount that we really are using, is much more than that and corresponds to this 163 times of the energy needed for a space shuttle. The space shuttle goes to the space. So this is a real problem for all of us because there's a real energy demand that human being has used to use, and we need to face this. The other problem is that the traditional way from where we get energy is getting rare. So we have oil, we have gas, coal, and uranium, but for all these energy sources, there is a limited time for them. If we continue using the energy like like I said before. So this is maybe a very dramatic prospect. Maybe it's not like this. Maybe this is the worst case situation. But anyway, it shows that this kind of energy is short time energy that we are available for all our energy demand. So this means that we need to find other sources of energy, and one of them you probably heard about is the shale gas. There are a lot of reserves for this kind of energy. It results from the fracturing of rocks, special rocks. But the thing is that this kind of energy, the harnessing of this kind of energy is very, very, very dangerous for the environment. And which means that we cannot use it longer. And again, this is not a very good energy to rely on because of that. The other source of energy that is a lot of people is now looking for is this oil that is present as these big reserves that are below this pre-salt layer on the seabed, or below the surface of the seabed. But again, this has a lot of challenges related with technology. We are not yet there to take the oil that is below this pre-salt layer. It's very expensive to get this oil. And again, this is going to be more about oil and more about greenhouse gases that are going to the atmosphere, and that we know that is not what we want. So this means that maybe renewable energy can somewhat complete this high energy demand that we need. Of course, not only the renewable energy sources could solve the problem, but anyway, this is the sector that has been a lot of interest from a lot of commercial developers, because it's really can really be used as a big source of energy for the energy mix that we need to survive and to correspond to this high energy demand that we need. So what happened is that in Europe we realized that we need to look at this sector with other eyes, and among other targets that were set before, which were very, very, very ambitious. Some years ago, the initial EU commitment was to have 80 to 95% of greenhouse gas reduction by 2050, but they realized very soon that this could not be possible because there was no conditions to get there. So the current trends in the policies in Europe establish that we will possibly get about 40% of reduction of these greenhouse gas emissions by 2050, but this has to be done using renewables and also saving energy, or trying to improve that part also, because we are actually expending a lot of energy that probably can be saved by other methods. So this means that from that time on, there was a directive, I didn't say that, but there was a directive that was set in 2009. And the main target was to get 20% of renewable energy by 2020. And to get this, the country started to work on this from 2009. These European directives need to be implemented in each member state. So this means that they need to be part of the legislation in each member state. So they need to take it very seriously. And that's what happened. So most part of the countries actually are getting there. So this is the map for the old countries in Europe. Only two of them, I think it's Italy and Luxembourg, we will need some other mechanisms to get this target on by 2020. But all the other countries, and then you can see different colors for different targets that the countries have attained. And all of them are almost there, and Portugal actually is there. I don't know if you know where it is. This whole country here. So you can see that we are within the countries that are meeting their 2020 targets, and we are very proud of it. So And a lot of prospects for 2020 have been made for marine renewable energy, and the graph you see on the left represents the sources of renewable energy compared with the traditional energy that is used by fossil fuels or gas or whatever. And you can see that it has been increased since 2005, and it is going to be, the trend is that it is going to be increasing until 2030. Among this very high percentage that is predicted for 2020 in Europe, there is a very important part, that is predicted for marine energy. About 20% of the energy that is predicted from renewable energy sources is supposed to come from marine energy. It's the red part that you can see in the pie chart on the right. So, among these 22% of electricity production from marine renewables, we expect that about 90% of it will correspond to offshore wind, which actually is the front runner in terms of marine renewable energy, and only 10% to wave and tidal energy. And this is mainly related with the progress on the technology that is not yet mature to start the commercial production. Another thing I would like to say here for this slide is that when I speak about marine renewable energy, I'm talking about offshore wind and ocean energy. And marine renewable energy includes all the sources of energy from the ocean and also from the wind in the ocean. And when I mention ocean energy, I'm talking about wave, tidal, ocean currents, ocean thermal energy that we call OTEC, and the salinity gradient power. The last two are the less developed compared with wave and tidal in the ocean, where technologies have been installed and tested. But for OTEC and salinity gradient power, well, the things are still a bit more delayed. This is the prospect for offshore wind. I have a map there that represents the North Sea and all the projects that have been installed and that are predicted for this area in the north of Europe. And as you can see, it's a huge area that is going to be occupied by these offshore wind parks. But this is not only in Europe. In China and Japan, there are a number of other parks that are predicted to be installed there, and the amount of energy that is going to be produced from them is also very high, and the estimation is that it is going to increase in the future. So, what happens with this offshore wind technology development is that most part of the parks that have been installed correspond to turbines that are installed in nearshore areas, in areas where the turbines or where the towers can be fixed to the seabed. So the big challenge here for the offshore wind is to go further offshore. And for that, we need to have platforms. We need to fix or to put the turbines floating. Otherwise, it will be impossible in terms of costs to have the turbines fixed on the seabed with hard structures. And this is especially because the wind speeds offshore are much better. So it means that the turbines offshore can be bigger than those that are near shore. The resource there is much higher. So it is going to be much more productive to have the turbines further offshore than have them near shore. So the big challenge, the big technological challenges for offshore wind is to develop these platforms, these floating platforms that can be feasible in depths greater than 100 meters. So this is a big challenge, and this is where the developers are in terms of technology development for this sector. So this is a graph that represents or that compares, I'm sorry, it is in Portuguese, but I think you can understand everything that is there. So you have, on the left, you have the costs for several types of turbines. And as you can see, the red curve corresponds to the floating structures that are going to be cheaper if we want to go offshore than the technologies or than the technology that is used to fix the turbines to the seabed. So this is one example of one of the projects that have been installed in Portugal. This is a floating platform that was installed, but I will come back to this project, some slides. Well, I will come back to this. So this is just to show you how they look, how these platforms may look. And I will speak about that later. So for tidal and ocean currents, this is again a map that represents where is the resource. And when you plan to install any kind of marine renewable energy technology, you need to be sure that you are installing it in the right place, in the place where you are going to have the better resource to produce enough energy for the project to be feasible commercially. These are the spots or the places in Europe where the resource for tidal and currents is better, and as you can see, only very small areas can be used for these kind of technologies, which means that this is still a technology that is going to be developed, and actually there are a number of projects that have been installed recently in Scotland. Well, it means that the technology is progressing regarding these two types of devices, but the thing is that you will not install them in larger areas because there's no resource. Actually, only small or very tiny spots can be used for that, at least here in the map for Europe. These are two examples of tidal turbines or tidal devices. The one on the left is the CGen project. It was a turbine that was installed in Strangford Lough in Ireland, and this turbine was successful. But since it was decommissioned, I never heard more about this project, so I don't know actually if the technology is going to be installed in other places. But anyway, the project was successful. Besides, it had a lot of environmental constraints and environmental requirements to be fulfilled before, during, and after the project was deployed. The example on the right is for the one tidal barrage that was built in France. In La Rance in France was the first that was constructed, and then Siwa in Korea was the largest one that was. I'm not sure if this is the picture for France or for Korea device, but anyway, the problem with these tidal devices is that they actually act as a barrier in places where tides are very high. And this means that this can cause a lot of environmental problems because you are dividing the system in two parts, and you cannot have the tides flowing normally and naturally among the place, which means that there are a lot of water quality problems in this kind of devices, and actually they are not very technologies that are going to be very successful in terms of commercial use. But anyway, these two barrages are working, and there are a number of environmental measures or mitigation measures that have been need to be followed to avoid the environmental problems that they can cause. So wave energy. Wave energy, as you can see, this is the map for Europe, and there's a lot of places where we can put wave energy devices. Here, the highest resource is in the coast of Scotland and Ireland there. But Portugal is also a very good place to install this kind of devices. And usually the wave resources are more in higher latitudes than in latitudes near the equator. So I put also there two examples. One of them is the Pico plant. It actually is owned by WaveEC, the company for which I work. We are responsible for this plant. Actually, it was the first, or one of the first wave energy devices. It is still working, but as you can see, it is falling apart. So it needs money to be refurbished, and we don't have it. But it is still a device that is working, and it is producing energy to the grid, to the local grid. So there is a very high diversity in terms of wave energy devices that have been tested and continue to be tested in the waters all over the world. And they have a lot of different designs, as you can see. But also this is because the type of waves you have in a given place are different. So that's why there is so much diversity in the technology types that we can have for wave energy harnessing. So I would like to go now for the types of technologies, and maybe you are interested to know this, or the groups of technologies that represent different concepts, but they can be summarized in 6 different groups, or that are made of common concept. So we can have, in terms of location, we can have devices for onshore. We can install devices onshore. The Pico plant, the one I showed you before, is one example of it. Nearshore, it means that nearshore 15 to 20 meters depth, or offshore, when the devices can be installed more than 50 meters depth. So this is the type of, actually are 5 types of devices that we can have: attenuator, overtopping, oscillating water column, point absorbers, oscillating wave surge converters. So this is the classification of energy, wave energy devices that is generally accepted by all people that work in the sector. And now I would like to show you some pictures for each of them. So this is the attenuator. Atenuador is the word in Portuguese, but it's attenuator, we call it in English. So it is a floating body. And the floating body is aligned with the wave propagation direction, and it works like this. So it is moving that part, and the The middle part is linked with the generator that then transmits the energy to land. Examples of these devices is the Pelamis. I don't know if you heard about it. It was possibly one of the most successful technologies that have been tested, at least in full scale. But at the end, there were a lot of problems in the junctions of the segments of the device that made it not very feasible because there were a lot of problems related with corrosion, and at the end the project was ended and the company was closed. So it was not very successful, this one. Then we have these point absorbers, which are structures that are installed on the surface of the water, and they move according to the waves that came. So they do this movement as it is shown there. And for this one, and this device absorbs the energy from the waves in all directions. So it is good to have this kind of concept, because it absorbs energy not only for one direction. The device can move with waves coming from different directions. As examples, I have there the power buoy, aqua buoy, and the wave bob all look more or like the same, because the concept is the same. Then we have this oscillating wave surge converter. It is a submerged structure with a pendular movement, so that barge that you see there is installed on the seabed, and that wing moves with the wave, and the movement is forward and backwards according to the wave movement. The problem of this device is that it can only be installed it is more productive when it is oriented towards the wave, which means that there are a number of forces that are possibly made on the device that don't come from the wave main direction, that can harness the structure of the device, and this is a weak point. With examples of these technologies is the wave roller, one of the projects that has been installed in Portugal, tested there, and the Oyster project, which actually is the same with the wing, but with a different aspect. Then we have this oscillating water column, which actually my colleagues from the technology believe a lot in this kind of concept, because all the moving parts of the device are not in the water; they are out of the water. This concept, there is a chamber, empty chamber, and what the wave does is just to move the air inside of that chamber, and the air makes the turbine move. The small turbine you see on the top is moving with the air that moves inside that chamber. So the Pico plant in Azores, the one that is owned by WAVEC, is one example of this concept. But there's also oscillating water columns that are installed offshore, like this OE buoy. I think this is the last one, overtopping. Here, the device is made of a very big platform, and the wave crosses that platform, overtops this platform, and then go through that hole that is there, and this movement of the water makes the turbine that is inside that hole move according to the water through it. So the only device that was installed with this concept was the Wave Dragon technology, but then again, it was installed just once, and it was not full scale. So it was a device that was installed, but it was the tests were some kind of successful, but it doesn't resist to a very strong storm, and at the end the device end up on the beach. It was not very good hand for it. So after this, and after explaining you the main concepts of wave energy, there are a lot of other challenges that a developer needs to pass through in order to have the device, a feasible device to rely on. So these are actually the main steps. This is not only for wave energy, actually. It also involves tidal and offshore wind. So anytime a technology needs to be tested, needs to be developed, these are the main steps or the main stages for which it needs to be passed through. So the first one is a very small model that is built to be tested in the lab. And here the geometrical optimization and numerical modeling is the main activity. So the device needs to pass these two tests. Then in a bigger scale, new lab tests are need to be carried out to test or to address or to see about the survivability and mooring strength of the device. So this is the second phase of the development of the technology. Then you have the sea trials, first in controlled situation. So usually when you get this phase, you pass the two first, and here you need to find a place that is not very exposed to the ocean, but has some conditions to try a device that is not full scale. It's again a small scale device. And here, during these sea trials, the sea conditions are tested in order to prepare the device for the full scale. Then you have the prototype. Here, it's a more serious test, again, in a controlled environment. But anyway, here you are going to test the performance, the survivability, the grid connection, and the power production quality. So this is time, if we go through the old phases and get this one, this is the time to prepare all the infrastructure that is going to link the device to land. And finally, the concept demonstration, which is 1-to-1. The scale is 1-to-1, is the full scale device where you test the performance and optimize the performance of the device in terms of design, in terms of materials. And you do the maintenance strategies and also think about the economic studies in order to have some input how you are going to commercialize the energy that is going to be harnessed by the device. So these are the main test sites where these technologies have been tested for wave and tidal mainly. So there's a lot of test sites around Europe. Actually, each country that has an interest in marine renewable energy has one or two test sites. And this means that these test sites are very important. They are pre-consented, which means that the licensing process here is much easier. There are baseline studies for the environmental part. There are other conditions in terms of facilities, in terms of grid connection, and the developer just needs to pay a fee per month to get the device there to test the device in each of these test sites. And this is very important because, yeah.
Sorry, what's the color mean?
The color, I don't think means anything. So, no. Yeah, I don't think the color means anything. It's just to discriminate between, well, to make the map more attractive, I think. No, there's no connection with the colors. I was trying to see if there was some concept related, but no, it's just the distribution of the test sites around Europe. So, there are a number of challenges that are connected with the development of these technologies, and now we come to them. So one of them is related to the technological development of the device. It's very hard for a developer to tackle all the aspects that need to be considered in order to have a device ready for commercial use. And this is related with the device design, which needs to be reliable, which needs to prove that it survives to the storms, that is going to be feasible in the harsh conditions provided by the ocean. Then the materials is also another important part of these new technologies. You need to be sure that the materials the developer needs to be sure the materials are the best in terms of corrosion, in terms of device performance, in terms also in environmental aspects, because there are some constraints related with the covers that you need to treat your device in order to have less corrosion. And biofouling is really a big problem for moving devices because it reduces the performance of the moving parts. So it is strongly recommended that you have all the blades, all the surfaces that are moving. They need to be very clean, which means that you need to use anti-fouling, very powerful anti-fouling and other types of protection that sometimes are different according to the materials you use. And also they need to be durable, and the costs, of course, they need to be not very expensive. So all these kind of things need to be taken into account when you are developing a device. Then the mooring systems. So mooring systems are very important to put the device in the right position, and the moorings need to be strong enough to have to act in a proper manner, and this may cause also some increasing costs because you need to be sure that you are having or you are introducing the best mooring system for your device. And then the maintenance. Maintenance is also very expensive because any mission at sea is related with boats, is related with special vessels to do some kind of operations that are not actually covered by a simple fishing boat. And this also increases the costs when you have a device installed at sea. So this means that the technology, at least for wave and tidal, and also for offshore wind related to floating platforms, which are actually the technologies that are now being developed, have a very high risk in terms of investment. And this is very difficult to convince someone that has money rely on all this uncertainty related with this new technology. So it's very, very, very difficult sometimes to be sure that we are going in the right direction. So, as I was saying, there are significant risks impeding the development of these new technologies, the reliability and survivability, cost reduction potential, capital investment, revenue support, but also there's a very important part of all of this project that is related with the regulatory risk. Sometimes the projects need to be licensed. Sometimes when you decided to go for a given technology, for a given site, a lot of uncertainty is still on the regulatory process and on the licensing process. You don't know if the location you have selected, or even the type of device for that specific location, will be the most appropriate, and this needs to pass the authorities' proof. And this is not always easy, because in some of the countries, even in Europe, don't have special or dedicated licensing procedures, which means that the time for licensing a project like this is very long, and these very long periods don't really match with the financial investment that is behind them, because they want to have results. Usually people that invest would like to have incomes in a short period of time, and the regulatory framework doesn't help in some cases to it. So lessons learned during, or best practices learned during the experience. It's not very long experience, but at least in Europe is the place where more devices have been tested. And the best practices have told us that we need to go through whole steps of the development of a given technology, and we cannot skip steps, because if we skip steps, there's a very strong possibility that our project cannot be feasible at the end. So the experience says that we need to follow each of the steps in order to be sure that we are going to attain the final result in a good condition. Then another best practice that has been learned during all these processes is that monitoring of this process need to be made by independent entities, those that can really help identifying what are the main problems, what could be done, what can be improved during the old stages of the technology development. And another one is to ensure that we have the proper funding and financial context for a project. Sometimes this is not actually very easy at the beginning, because the funds are released by parts, by phases, and we can come to the conclusion that passing the first phase, we don't have money to go to the second one. So we spent a lot of money in the first phase, and we don't have money to progress, even thinking that the tests were successful. So it's very important to ensure that we have the good financial capacity to go further with the project, which usually means that we maybe need to have additional costs saved in some place to use if needed, because there are surprises during the processes, and these surprises usually are very costly. Another lesson learned is related with the environmental and social issues, and we need to take care of them from the early beginning of the project. And I put there all the receptors, the stressors, and the effects that are usually concerned when we are analyzing the feasibility of a project. And usually this is a very important part, because sometimes the developer doesn't think about them. And actually at the end, when the project is going to be licensed, then the problems started to rise, because the authorities want the project to be monitored before, and sometimes there's no much money to do the studies, to do the surveys that are needed, and which means that we really need to consider these environmental and social issues from the beginning. The social part is related with the communities, the local communities, that are not always fan of these projects, especially the fishermen, because they are going to lose fisher areas. They will need to fish in other places, and they are usually not very keen to have the projects in their backyard or in the place that they use to do their activities. So I will not go through all of them, but if anyone wants this presentation, of course, I can send for you to see what could be the most important impacts related with these technologies. So, as a I think conclusion, yes, for this part, then I will present the WINDFLOAT project. But as a conclusion, there are factors that can act as a barrier, but are others that can act as accelerator for the installation of this kind of technology. The first one is the resource assessment and the geographical characterization of a given area. For some countries, we know that the resource is there, but we don't really know what are the best locations to put that specific device or that specific type of marine renewable energy. Some places are better for offshore wind, others for currents, others for wave. So it is very important to have a characterization of the coasts, of the country coasts, to be sure that we are installing the technologies in the most proper places. Then we need to have this technology and research and development accompaniment of all the projects or of all the technology development, and the technology is in progress. So there's no yet any technology, at least for wave, that we can say, so is this technology is the right one for this kind of type of wave. So we cannot say that yet. So we are a bit far to have these wave technologies in a mature stage to say that we can rely commercially on them. Of course, for offshore wind, this is completely different because there's a turbine that is very well tested, at least. So the problem is more related with the mooring of the turbine if we want to go offshore, further offshore. And then we have these non-technological barriers, the regulatory issues. As I said, there's no for some countries, it is hard to find dedicated legislation, even in Europe, for these specific devices, which means that the licensing process are usually very long, because the authorities don't know exactly what to do and need advices from a number of other entities, and this makes the process very long. Then there are lack of financial incentives. In the beginning in UK, there were a lot of funding available for wave and tidal devices, but this is no longer truth. So exists some of the funding, but now it is getting very scarce because again there's no match between the time that we need to develop the technology and the financial investment and the income or the revenues that we can get from a project, and these two aspects usually don't match. Infrastructure and logistics, we need ports, we need places, shipyards, we need universities that can help the developers improving their devices, and also places to assemble the components of the devices. And maybe this is also a problem in some regions of the countries where marine renewable energy can be harnessed. Then there's a lot of conflicts of views, and I mentioned already one of them. Fisheries is one big sector that is usually in conflict with marine renewable energy. Environmental issues, and here there are problems related not only with the negative impacts of the devices, but also with the sustainability of the projects in a given area. So if you want to have a park in in a given region, you need to be sure that the number of devices you are going to install there are actually can actually be installed there in terms of environmental acceptance of the area, because there are sensitivities related with some features of the area, which involve species protection, habitats protection. So these environmental issues are usually considered also barriers to install very big projects. And the public perception, which is also sometimes not very good. Actually, people are very pro to have renewable energy because it is a clean energy, but at the end, if the devices are going to be installed in the place where the person is used to run, to go for a run, or near a beach that he or she uses during the summertime, that is a very big problem. Sometimes public perception in these local areas is not the best. So this is also considered a barrier for the progress of the sector. So, having said that, I have some more slides on this big project that was installed in Portugal, called WINDFLOAT. WAVEC was responsible to do the activities I put there: benchmarking, environmental monitoring, public outreach, field with ROV, and data analysis. So we did this for this 18 million euro project, and well, it was a successful project, but there were a number of issues that I will list here for you to know a bit more about it. So this is a 2 megawatt turbine located in Aguçadora, which is a region, a village, a small village in the north of Portugal, near Póvoa de Varzim. It's the main city in the area. And the project was led by a consortium made of a number of companies. Principal Power is a US company that was the technology owner, so they own the concept. And a number of other companies, EDP, which is the power utility in Portugal, Repsol, that you should know. Repsol is oil fuel company. A Silva Matos is an engineer, civil engineer company that was responsible to assemble parts of the device. Vestas Wind System, that provided the turbine for the tower. And Enough Capital, which was a funding agency that was also involved in the consortium. So the project was installed in a location offshore, 5 kilometers from the coastline, at 50 meters depth. The project was grid connected. You can see in the picture on below where the cable pass on. So it was grid connected. So it was linked to the national grid. So it was actually producing to the national grid. And at the end, and this was the exclusion area that was designed around the cable and around the device that caused the main social problems, as I will list. So the concept is explained here. So it is a tripod, as you can see. Each of that pillars correspond to an empty tube, which has inside water, ballast water, that compensates the movement of the platform. So it was a very, very, very resilient platform. It survived to 50-meter wave in the area. This area is an area where very big storms can be expected during the winter. So the biggest wind wave was one 15-meter wave that actually was surfed by a very McNamara, you know, I don't know if if you heard this surfer that surfed a very big wave in Nazaré, which is also other location in Portugal, very important for surfing competitions. And he managed to surf the wave, but the wind float also survived to that wave. It also was able to surf the wave, so it proved to be very, very resilient to very harsh situations that happened in the ocean. So the device was moored, anchored to the seabed through that mooring lines, and in each edge of the square you see there, you can see the place where the anchor was put on the seabed. So, one of the main problems related with the installation of this device was the environmental impact assessment. Well, the developer had to carry out this EIA, and the main objectives of the EIA were, as others, to demonstrate and confirm the findings or the evaluation of the impacts to determine appropriate steps to mitigate negative, if any, environmental impacts. So, actually, this is not EIA objectives, this is environmental monitoring objectives. So, monitoring that was carried out during the project operation was to confirm or not, or to evaluate the impacts that were identified in the EIA phase. So, which means that the developer needs to carry out monitoring activities related with underwater noise. A lot of measurements need to be carried out during 1 year period after the device was installed. Marine mammals, there was a very big concern about the species that distribute around the area, and this was related with the entanglement or entrapment or collision with the platform, but also with the mooring lines. There was a concern that the marine mammals could in somewhat be entrapped or entangled with the mooring lines, which is a bit stupid, I think, because these mooring lines are very, very, very thick things, so they move very slow, as you can see in the water. So I don't think this was, and it was not a problem actually at the end for entanglement or entrapment of marine mammals in the area. But anyway, there was a potential for collisions. Yes, this was a very important aspect to be concerned with. Bird behavior because of the turbine. Of course, birds are always the main concern when you have offshore wind turbines, and not offshore. In onshore also there are a lot of concerns with the bird flocks that pass through these parks. Marine flora and fauna growth on the submerged equipment, and the visual impact of the device along the coast, because the area was very touristic. There are a lot of beaches around the coastline, along the coastline. So this was a problem that was identified as a possible important impact to be take care during the monitoring activities. So during these monitoring activities, these topics or these descriptors were made based on the characterization of the existing environment, the impacts of the facility or the predicted impacts of the facility, but also to the monitoring activities were carried out to confirm and also to see if the mitigation measures that were listed were actually effective in the area. So what I'm going to show to you is the results of this. Some results of these monitoring campaigns. So these are the results for the underwater noise measurements. The map that you can see there is represents the place, the transepts that were considered during these acoustic measurements. So we need to carry out these acoustic measurements in several transects along the coast, offshore, and also in a some kind of diagonal towards the coast. So we choose that three transepts to understand what could be the noise propagation of the turbines, also the background noise of the in the area, because this is very important when the acoustic characteristics or conditions of a given area are strongly related with the sea state, which means that when you have storms or when you have rain or very high waves or very hydrodynamic place, you can expect that the natural noise around will increase compared with situations with more calm situations of the sea state. So this has to be taken into account, of course, when you are studying the acoustic conditions of a given area, but also the measurements were to characterize the source of noise, the type of noise that was produced in terms of frequencies and also in terms of intensities, and what was the propagation of the sound along the transect. So the transects were used to understand what were the propagation of the device noise around the area. So there were, we made 3 acoustic campaigns during spring, summer and autumn, and to characterize the 3 types of parameters I already mentioned. So the results for the background noise, of course, we detect that in sea states, during storms, the noise stays around, are very important to reduce the propagation of the turbine noise. But the noise can be heard mainly on the surface, but it is also detected in depth at 25 meters depth when the turbine is rotating in a high velocity. The noise propagation, we understood from our results that the noise can be heard until 1.5 kilometers from the device when the sea conditions were very calm. So this is actually not a very big distance, but another important information that we got is that we detect the presence of marine mammals vocalizations around the device. So, which means they were probably very curious about the structure, and they went there just to see what it was. They use the echolocation, they emit sounds and receive sounds to understand what are the obstacles in the area. So they probably went there to see, oh, what is this? What? So they were very curious about it. So the analysis of the entanglement, entrapment, and collision was focused on these 2 main species, the common dolphin and the harbor porpoise. The second species is considered very vulnerable. The conservation status is not very good. So, this was a big concern because these species are also very difficult to detect because they are very shy. They don't actually show up when they hear some kind of vessel in the vicinity. They go away. So they are very difficult to observe. And the observation of this kind of species, or this species particularly, is made with acoustic methods that were not used during the monitoring activities. We only used the visual observations in the area, so it was not possible to detect these species in the area. So, which means the distribution of the common dolphin and harbor porpoises rely on literature and expert knowledge that existed in the area to have the baseline situation. And then we use the visual campaigns with the boat and observers on the boat doing transects around the device to understand what was the distribution along the area and compare it with the existing information in order to see if there was any change. But at the end, no results show evidences that the one turbine can actually have any effect on the distribution of this species. And we finally conclude from the acoustic surveys, which were not actually directed for this species measurement, but were directed for the noise of the device, we understood that they actually are distributing there and they are curious about the device. Another important problem related with the installation of this device is the colonization with biofouling of the platform. And this is important because usually these artificial structures provide new habitats for the species to grow, to develop. And sometimes the species that attach to these artificial structures are exotic species, are species that don't belong to the environment, to the ecosystem in the area, and they can dominate the ecosystem, and these artificial structures may be a way for them to develop more and harness the natural environment in the area. So that's why the authorities wanted us to figure out if there were what kind of species were colonizing the structure, and if there were evidences for the growth of exotic species that can damage the environment in the area. So we made some ROV campaigns to understand what was the development of, or the growth of these species along the pillars of the device, but also in that structures, the lateral structures that you see there. So we did these ROV campaigns and understood that the first 2 meters of the pillars were colonized with algae. Actually, this is not rocket science because they are usually colonizing places where they can get more light for the photosynthesis. So actually the first 2 meters were made of red algae, but also mussels. And the next layer was for brown algae and mussels again. And this brown algae maybe needs less light conditions than the red algae. That's why they colonized all the second layer of organisms. And then the final part of the pillar was colonized by these mussels and sea urchins and sea stars. So I put there some pictures. They are actually not very good on the screen, but these were taken from the pillars. And we didn't actually identified any exotic species on the platform. So this is more results about the platform colonization. Yeah, this is too specific for ecólogos. I don't know if there are any biologists in the area, in the audience, but yes, there are some. So you probably understand very well these graphs here. So they try to compare biomass values among pillars and also among depths. So we made a kind of analysis of the results we got to understand if there were any differences in the colonization of the platform as a whole, and we knew that the pillar that was more protected from the currents that were oriented north to south were the most diverse in terms of species composition than the other two that were more exposed to the waves and to the currents that come from the north. So this was the main condition, but anyway, it's not a very innovative conclusion because it is actually what happens at the end. We just confirmed that it was working as it should. So the seabirds, we also were involved in this kind of survey. So you can see for the surveys made for the seabirds, a radar needed to be installed on the substation. There was no possibility to install the radar on the platform because there was no. The radar needs to be powered, and the structure was not dimensioned to include the power that needs to be used by the radar for the survey. So, which means that they installed the device on land 5 kilometers far from the platform, and at the end the results were very bad because there is a clutter or the proper conditions of the visibility are not very good, and also the radar, which actually relies on radiation, but anyway, even the humidity of the area and the conditions of the air were not good enough to get feasible results from the radar. Anyway, it was possible to identify the species that were distributed in the area, and also see that some of them were very have a conservation status not very good, especially these balearic the shearwaters, because they are critically endangered. So it was possible to prove that they are distributing in that area. So if a park goes to that region, this could be a big concern in terms of this species conservation that needs to be taken into account. And finally, this is my last slide, I think. Yes. So, the other part we did was to try to understand what could be the effects of the visual impacts for the population that uses the area. So we carried out a number of questionnaires to understand what were the opinion of the people regarding this infrastructure. We selected 8 viewpoints, and we went to these several viewpoints to distribute these questionnaires to get the public opinion on the device. Well, the opinions, the Portuguese people, they are not very well against the project. Actually, the project was a very tiny spot on the horizon, so it was sometimes very difficult to see because the sea was, the conditions may not be very good. There was a lot of fog in several, most periods of the, very long periods of during the year. So actually the people could not really see the device working there. But, well, one device doesn't make any difference, so most part of the people were okay with having it in the horizon, so no problem for that. The main problem that we faced was related with fishermen, and we've carried out 2 public sessions to inform the population on the project, and the first one was a nightmare, because one of the fishermen, well, there are a number of associations, fisheries associations along the coast, as everywhere. And this fisherman was very angry because he was not consulted regarding the area, the exclusion area for fishing, for fisheries and navigation. So this means that when you have this kind of projects, for safety reasons, you need to set an area where no navigation is allowed. Actually, you could pass above the cable, because actually it was crossing crossing the offshore, so it was not possible to prohibit or forbidden the access there. But around the device, because of the anchors, because of the mooring lines, no permission for fisheries and no permission for navigation was allowed, which means that the fishermen that use the area to fish need to be moved to other places. This was a very big problem for us because the fishermen that attended the public session was really very angry with the developer and with everybody. And it was very difficult to calm him down. And we had a bad time. But at the end, and this is why it's very important to inform the people much early in the process to be sure they agree with the conditions, they agree, and they are at least aware of what is going to be happened in the area. So the fishermen didn't know that there was an exclusion area, and this was the main problem. There were some people around in the public session that were from the port authority and also from the municipality, and those two people were persons were very people that were very considered in the region. They were very actually respected. Sorry, and that's what saved the. Okay. That's what saved the day, because they helped us a lot trying to calm down the fishermen. And at the end, he was convinced that it was not safe for the fishermen to fish in the area. And after the developer said to him that he will compensate him with some money, he calmed really down, and then the discussions started to be productive. At the end, they needed to move from that area. They could not fish in the area, but, well, it was only temporarily, because the project was installed just from 2011 until 2016, so it was decommissioned last year in August. And, well, some years that skipped the fishermen to use the area, so it was okay for them. So I think that's what I wanted to show to you. I don't have any more slides, but if you have questions, podemos hablar en español, si quieren. Yeah. Okay.
Yo tengo una pregunta, Teresa. ¿Qué pasa? Ahorita el proyecto que nos expusiste es un proyecto experimental, es una turbina, el área, pero ¿qué pasa si queremos poner un proyecto que realmente sea redituable en términos de producción de energía eléctrica y tuviéramos que, no sé, cuántas turbinas pueden ser? ¿20, 30 turbinas? Una cosa por el estilo sería un proyecto ya así como de gran escala con una producción alta de energía. ¿Qué espacio necesitaría? Y los impactos entonces se multiplicarían.
Sí.
Porque ahorita lo estamos haciendo para una cosa que es pequeñita, sí. Y pienso un poco, por ejemplo, en las plataformas petroleras, que no es una plataforma. Cuando tú ves todo el montón de plataformas petroleras de Pemex, dices, órale, o sea, es un área gigantesca, ¿no? Y que se queda fuera de la pesca y que ya no es el impacto visual original. O sea, esta evaluación de un solo, de una sola turbina, pues te da una idea, pero finalmente no te dice con claridad cuál es el impacto a la biodiversidad y cuál sería el impacto en términos de contaminantes y de contaminación electromagnética y todo eso cuando estamos hablando de poner 20 turbinas, 50 turbinas, yo qué sé, ¿no?
Claro. Este es uno de los problemas porque no tenemos un proyecto comercial, tiene... a vuelta de 100 turbinas o menos, mas no es. I'm going to speak in English. It's not feasible to have a project less than 150 turbines, but it really depends on the place. Of course, this kind of technology is a floating technology. It is not to be installed near the coast. It is going to be installed further on to 100 meters offshore, which means that the conflicts with the fishermen will be less than in this near coastal area, because this is just 5 kilometers from shore. But these kind of projects are supposed to be further offshore. We have now this project, or the pre-commercial version of this project is going to be 4 turbines project that is going to be installed also in the north of the country, but 15 kilometers from offshore. That is one aspect related with the conflicts with the fishermen, because further offshore you are not supposed to have so much conflicts, because here they were conflicting with traditional fisheries, traditional fishermen that have just one boat, and they just rely on the money that they get from their fisheries. So, and usually these kind of fishermen, they have these associations made of a lot of fishermen, and they are represented by these bigger representatives that actually have a very strong power in terms of communication, in terms of media. So they are always very able to go to the TV or to the radio, say that they are not agreeing with the project. This is one aspect. Regarding to the environmental aspects, of course, one turbine will not give you much information on the cumulative impacts that a number of turbines could have in the environment. That's why it's very difficult to upscale the impacts from one turbine to a park, which means that we need to be very careful when we are talking about impacts of a park with a lot of turbines. And usually these are projects that have another level of monitoring requirements. They need to have sensors on sites. They need to be monitored every day, every time. So there are specific monitoring platforms that are installed just for that purpose. So it is another level of monitoring. And sometimes in Portugal, at least onshore, we have some parks that have already a system that stop the turbine when the flocks of birds are passing, because two of the projects parks that we have onshore were installed in migration routes. So what they did to mitigate the deaths from birds that could pass along were to install this radar system that scans the air or the area around in the radio. I don't know what it is, the distance, but it scans the area in order to detect the passage of these flocks during the migration periods. And what the system does is to stop all the turbines when the flocks are approaching. So this is the kind of systems that are expected to be working to mitigate this kind of structure. So it is another level of monitoring and mitigation that is needed for parks and for multi turbines places or very large space occupied by this. Yeah.
Do you have a specific procedure to evaluate the environmental impacts to each different type of technologies and different type of designs, or is one guide for these procedures to evaluate?
Yeah, usually the environmental impact assessment process is the same for any project. Of course, when you are talking about marine projects in the marine space, there are some descriptors that need to be addressed during the environmental impact assessment that are different from the projects on land. But usually the environmental impact assessment is a process that has a lot of steps, and the first step or the second step is the scoping phase, where you evaluate what kind or what would be the scope in terms of descriptors, in terms of spatial use, in terms of area that needs to be surveyed. It's the phase where you set all this. So depending on the project, during this phase is the time to list what will be the concerns, the descriptors that need to be taken into account to carry out the environmental impact assessment. So there is a general procedure. Usually the environmental impact assessment process is more or less the same in everywhere. In countries sometimes give some more importance to specific stages of the process, but in general all licensing, all environmental impact assessment processes around the world obey to the same standard structure. So this is what we have, but of course the first step is to adapt the environmental impact assessment to the specificities of the project that is being analyzed.
Gracias, Teresa, por tu presentación. Fue muy interesante. En uno de los datos que nos mostraste, se veía como un gran contraste entre la energía sacada del viento marino y aquella que se sacaba de las olas y de las corrientes, ¿no? Entonces, ¿por qué es tan contrastante esa información entre 90% una y 10% otra? ¿Tiene que ver con la tecnología o con la eficiencia energética en cada una de esas? Ya ves que nos mostraste al principio dos barritas, una con 90% sí, y otra con 10%. Sí. ¿No? Entonces, ¿por qué esa gran disparidad?
Sí, más los 10% corresponde al wave and tidal. Ajá. Los 90% para viento, para eólicas.
O sea, pero ¿han probado ambos tipos de instrumentos para obtener los dos tipos de energía y resultó que la de viento es más eficiente, o sea, en 90%, o fue por el tema de infraestructura?
No, it has to be with the development of the technology. The offshore wind is going on the front, so it is expected that we will have more offshore wind in the future than we will have wave and tidal. That's what the graph means. So 90% of the total energy from renewables that is predicted for marine renewables is going to be from wind, offshore wind, and only 10% from wave and tidal. Because the technology is not really there and there's no certainty. This data refers to 2030. So it may be that after that we will have a higher percentage of wave and tidal, but until 2030, the main percentage of marine renewables is going to be made or harnessed by offshore wind, and only 10% from wave and tidal. After or further on, from 2030 on, maybe we will have more wave and tidal, depending on the status of the technology, which we think will improve. But anyway, this is the information that we have, given the technology development that we have now. So that's what...
Bueno, y sobre todo lo preguntaba porque, bueno, dentro del gran proyecto, ¿no?, que tenemos son las 4 líneas transversales, donde ninguna de ellas involucra la parte de viento marino. Entonces, por esta parte de biodiversidad, de cómo afectan ese tipo de infraestructura, entonces, por ejemplo, aves, ¿no? Nosotros pensábamos aves costeras, solamente desde la parte como terrestre, ¿no? El tipo de infraestructura que se desarrollaría en la parte terrestre, porque la mayoría de infraestructura que está propuesta para el megaproyecto tiene que ver con la parte acuática, ¿no?
Sí, a ver, esto tiene que ver un poco con lo que Teresa hizo el planteamiento en la primera parte. Cuando se habla en inglés, cuando menos, entre energía marina, incluyes toda y ahí está el viento. Y luego tienes la oceánica, que tiene que ver, digamos, es la hidráulica marina. La que tienes ya sea por parte, digamos, por ejemplo, todas estas que estaban poniendo aquí. En el tema aquí de lo que se hablan de los porcentajes, es la participación de. Pero uno de los temas que es muy interesante en la gráfica que presentó Teresa es, si tú lo ves en el año, por ejemplo, 2000, realmente quitando la RANS y 2 o 3 ejemplos más en el mundo muy pequeños, realmente la participación de energías marinas es muy pequeña. Si te sitúas en el 2030, va a ser del 20%. O sea, la expansión que va a tener el aprovechamiento de la energía, exactamente esa. Si vas viendo la parte verde, va a ir creciendo. Y luego si ves en esa, va a ir disminuyendo proporcionalmente offshore wind y va a ir aumentando la de oleaje, mareas y corrientes. Si nos vamos al probablemente 2050, ya tendremos toda la participación más equilibrada, al menos que me corrija esta Teresa.
See, now the idea is that the blue part for 2030, this part here, is going to be distributed along the other types of renewable energy. Well, this is the ideal situation. But of course, the traditional way of producing energy is going to continue until we have oil available for producing energy. But in the future, it is possible that we will increase all the types of renewable energy sources, and we hope wave and tidal can also increase.
Buenas tardes, doctora. Muchas gracias por su presentación. ¿Cómo se compara el costo de producción de este tipo de energía en comparación con otras fuentes de energía renovable o, más específico, otras fuentes de energía marina también?
That's the big problem. Because the marine renewable energy is not feasible commercially. Well, it's very expensive nowadays because of the technology development. So it's very expensive to have these parks, but they are, progressing in terms of area anyway, because as long as you have more parks existing, the costs will going down, because you will have, in terms of supply chain, higher capacity of producing the components for all the structures. So it means that, in an ideal situation at the end, you are going to have a marine renewable energy competitive with the energy sources that are produced on land, or even other renewable energy sources, or even oil and gas. That would be the ideal situation. But of course, at current time, this kind of energies implementations is only possible if there are incentives from the governments. And the governments, and especially Scotland and Germany, Norway, and Denmark, they actually pay higher the energy produced by renewable sources at this time. And that's why it is improving, it is progressing. Otherwise, this is called the feed-in tariff. When a park is to be installed, there is an agreement between the developer and the government that the government will pay a part of the energy higher than it is produced on land. This is to incentivize the development of the sector, but this is not sustainable. So at the end, the objective is that the marine renewable energy could be competitive with other energy sources too.
But I mean, among the marine energies, the wind offshore energy, compared between the other marine energies.
Okay, it's cheaper. It's cheaper because you have more device, you have more turbines, you have more parks. A project for wave energy, one single device, costs around 10 million euros. I don't know for sure what is the amount in pesos, but yeah, okay, so 20 times, 200 pesos, 200,000 pesos, which means that it's very expensive for one single device.
Para complementar lo que dijo Teresa, hace entre 15 y 20 años, y me podrás corregir, la Unión Europea pagó el desarrollo de la energía solar y de la energía eólica. Era comparativamente igual de cara que ahora es la marina. Para desarrollar hubo muchísimas subvenciones. De hecho, yo conozco casos en España, particularmente en Andalucía, que un negocio era comprar un aerogenerador, la gente lo ponía, invertía 10 y el gobierno le devolvía 12. Y empezaron a aparecer como hongos, porque estaba muy subvencionada. Entonces el gobierno te pagaba por ocupar tu terreno. Entonces era más negocio tener una turbina que tener un olivo. Por hacer la comparación. En esta ocasión no sé cómo se vaya a dar, pero parece ser que la Unión Europea no quiere pagar el desarrollo para el mundo.
Sí. So that's the way to do it. If you want to invest in a new technology, you need to give conditions, financial conditions for it to improve. So that's why.
Thank you, Teresa. I am an engineer, so while you were talking to us about the assessment of the environmental impact, I was wondering if you are working in, or if is it possible to take that to some numerical or quantitative values, and probably that's the path or the way to upscale it from one device to a farm, or I don't know, but I mean, that's always a question from engineers. How can we put that in less subjective ways and more quantitative ways, so that we can apply it in several places and for several...
Yeah, well, there are a number of methodologies that have been developed for that, especially software that tries to quantify the impacts, because sometimes it depends on the expert knowledge. For instance, for me, it may be very important to protect marine mammals, and I think this frequency, this specific frequency, is the same as they are using, because, well, we can cross and we have data for that. And I can value this much than a colleague of mine that, no, this is not really important. So sometimes this evaluation is, well, some kind personal, and it's very difficult to find criteria to quantify this change, or to really know if an impact is really a change or not. Usually these kind of methodologies rely mostly on statistical analysis, power analysis, with complex statistic methods that are applied to baseline conditions compared with the values or the data that is obtained during the operation of the devices. But this is not easy, because even the statistical application has a lot of problems, because you need to have a representative number of observations to rely on the results, and this is sometimes not really feasible. It's not possible to have them. But yes, I think we are progressing on that path. We would like to have methodologies to be more quantifiable in terms of impacts. And there are some approaches that go in that direction. But this is also very new for us. This is also in terms of environmental analysis. There are few projects with a duration in time that we can rely. So we don't have much data for the operation of the devices. We can guess some of the impacts, but it's still not a very long period to say, yes, this is a real impact, this is really a problem, or no, this is not a problem. Well, for some of them, we already have some clues, but for others, it's difficult yet to understand that. But yeah, if you want to develop a methodology like that, would be great.
Let's talk about it.
Yes, let's talk about it.
Bueno, antes de que hagas el comentario y que va en el sentido de lo que dijo Edgar, estaba hablando con mucha gente acerca de energías renovables. Hay un dicho en español que dice que lo que no se ve no se siente, que luego se transformó en amor de lejos. El tema tiene que ver con lo siguiente. Cuando se empezó a implementar las energías renovables, la gente empezó a ver con muy buenos ojos la eólica onshore, o sea, la que está en tierra, y lo que son estas campos solares. Al final, con el tema de la eólica, en corto plazo la gente se quejó mucho del tema de estos frecuencias de sonido que generaban muchas molestias, y se fue mejorando la tecnología al grado que propiamente uno pasa y casi no se siente. Se empezó a hablar de muchas cosas y la han ido mitigando. Y lo mismo con los campos solares. Hay un aspecto que casi nunca se incluye en las evaluaciones, y es el aspecto psicológico. O sea, ¿cuál es el impacto psicológico por perder ciertas características o por ganar otras propiedades? Y ahí estaba hablando recientemente con una colega, y me dice que hoy día el problema más serio que hay en Europa para la gente que tiene instaladas aerogeneradores es disturbios mentales, porque cada que salen de su casa tienen una cosa dando de vueltas. Y que cuando llegan, no es en serio, o sea, llegan y entonces esta parte que trastorna, entonces que realmente empiezan a tener la gente una como reacción como si estuviera en guerra, y que peor es si está cerca de uno de estos campos solares, que probablemente eso es lo que me decía, va a detonar cuando ya tengamos muchos trastornados mentales, en que las energías marinas, las oceánicas particularmente, tengan más cabida para evitar tantos problemas psicológicos. Que yo no sé qué tan real sea, pero sé que en Canadá, pero en Canadá las eólicas onshore propiamente no las están desarrollando por este tema de todo el problema psicológico que hay con la gente.
Es un impacto en los hombres,
Sí, exactamente. No solo en las aves y demás, sino también en la gente. Sí. Que no sé si tú habías escuchado algo al respecto.
No.
Bueno, eso lo escuché y la verdad es que sí me lo puedo imaginar.
Voy a procurar.
Mencionaba que van a instalar 4 de estas plataformas 15 kilómetros adentro de la línea de costa. ¿Para cuándo tienen contemplado empezar eso y cuánto tiempo va a durar esta nueva fase? Sigue siendo a modo de prueba, ¿no?
Sí. It's a pre-commercial project to test if it is commercially viable. It is going to be installed possibly in 2 years period, but the first big challenge is to install the cable. The cable is very expensive, needs to have 15 kilometers long and be produced for the purpose. And the production of the cable will take at least 1 year. So it means that if everything is prepared during this first year, when the cable is going to be installed, maybe in an optimistic perspective, we will have the project working in 2 years period. I don't know, but maybe this is too optimistic. And the project will be installed for 25 years. At least is the time for the concession that the state gave to the developer.
Will it be the same size that the previous platform and everything the same, just the location and more platforms?
Well, the turbines are going to be bigger, much bigger. because it is a pre-commercial. So all the dimensions are going to be real, and and because as I was saying, the wind offshore is much more high than onshore and then near the coast. That's why the turbines are going to be very big and very tall, much taller than this one. This one has 110 meters high, and the others, I think they are going to attain 200 meters. I don't know, more or less. So, and the turbines are going to be very much bigger than this one, and it will be 4 of them. So, yeah, we will have them.
And I guess you will continue with the environmental impact assessing.
I hope so.
So it's not for sure.
I don't know. Well, they usually put this kind of surveys in a bid, and we need to apply for them. And if we have the best price, they select us. So we need to be very cheap.
Oh, I see. Okay, thank you.
Nada más para sacar la proporción, es el equivalente a un edificio de 70 pisos.
Sí.
Eso es lo que miden las árabes. O sea que no es cuando estamos hablando de esto, no es precisamente que tienen un reguilete, un reguilete, no sé si es lo mismo en portugués, son una cosa que da de vueltas para los niños, que le soplas y das de vueltas.
Como niño.
Sí. Que no es pequeñito, que esto es enorme.
Sí.
¿Alguna pregunta extra? ¿Tú tienes alguna, Miguel?
Se me ocurre pensar que en contraposición, cuando se traza un cable, hay una zona que no se permite la navegación. Pues para pesquerías eso corresponde a una veda, que puede ser positivo, ¿no?
Sí. Depending on the fishery gear, the fishery is allowed. So in the cable that I showed there, so there was an area for the cable protection where no trail, how do you call that? Pescaría de arrastro? ¿Tienes de arrastro? Arrastre. Eso tipo no es permitido. No puedes pescar according to that gear. But for the others, I think it's possible. But even it's very dangerous if they use this. I can't remember now the name in English, but this arrastre techniques can damage the cable and are not good for the boats and the safety of the fishermen. That's why it is not allowed for them to fish in that way.
Thank you.
Bueno, hay una pregunta que llegó electrónicamente. Ya eres tan buena ingeniero que la pregunta es para ingenieros.
Wow.
No, la pregunta es si tú crees que este tipo de dispositivos, sobre todo los que tienen una parte aérea, sean factibles en sitios donde tenemos el embate de huracanes. Un huracán puede tener en algunas zonas vientos mayores a 200 kilómetros por hora y rachas de viento que pueden ir a 350 kilómetros por hora, que es parecido a lo de un tornado.
Sí. Estamos hablando de viento. Nestas estruturas, lo impacto do viento nestas estruturas. I don't know much about that, but my colleagues say to me that in terms of corrosion, in terms of feasibility, all moving parts that are out from the water are better than those that are inside of the water. But I believe this survivability of these devices is a very big problem. That's why the European Commission is now funding projects that can also give some technologies to avoid or to predict the problems related with these storms. One of the projects that has been funded, we are coordinating that project, is to think about how these devices can survive during these very big storms. And one of the solutions they have found, which is thought to be feasible, is to submerge the devices when the storms come. So instead of having them on the surface, they have a system to collect them next to the seabed in order to avoid all the breaking waves and all the damage conditions, and of course stop the device of working. It is not actually harnessing energy, but at least it will not be will not fall apart.
Contratada como ingeniera. Que te decir, solo a eso yo le sumaría que ya se está trabajando el tema de álabes desechables, que en un momento dado, si se te dañan, las puedas reemplazar muy rápidamente, porque el problema hay de dos tipos, estos que se sumergen y otros que tienen un como fusible, un fuse, que lo que hacen es que colapsan. Pero en estos movimientos tan súbitos es muy complejo mantener los álabes correctos. Entonces, parte de lo que se está trabajando ahora es tener álabes desechables. De hecho, incluso biodegradables. Que es lo único que añadiría, pero sí. ¿Alguien tiene más? Aquí, te la vamos a mandar a...
My last question, I promised.
Oh, no, you can do it. It's a nice discussion. I like this. You are much more alive than Portuguese students, actually.
Entiendo que ya sacaron la plataforma que tenían en periodo de prueba. ¿Qué hicieron con esa estructura?
Sí, esta estructura, the structure is now on the port, waiting for a new solution for it. But it was a very expensive platform because it was all made of steel. The next generation of the devices will possibly be built of concrete because it's much cheaper. But there are problems with the floatability and with the strength, not strength, well you are... with the forces, because concrete is not actually the most strong material to have at sea. So they are thinking of having half-half, or a part with steel, which corresponds to the parts that are more vulnerable to the forces at sea, and other parts with concrete to help to go down the costs, to reduce the costs. And currently the structure is in the ports, and the idea is to use it. Well, there are a number of ideas for it, actually, but one of them is to use it to test aquaculture cages, or put it offshore to test sensors or whatever, because it is a very stable platform, actually. So it is very good to have things connected to it, and could help on that. So possibly this is one of the uses, but nobody knows yet what is going. We need investment, and the maintenance of this platform is very expensive, and that's why there's no solution yet for it. We need investors. Tensión, sí. With your help, yes. With your help, I'm going to be a very good engineer in the future.
Bueno, pues muchas gracias, doctora Teresa. Queremos entregarle un pequeño reconocimiento y un regalo de parte del instituto. Gracias. Y bueno, pues muchas gracias por acompañarnos.
Obrigada. Gracias.
Sí, obrigada. Todos de este lado para el...